My name's Rex. She'll call me Captain.
What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith?
The shroud of the dark side has fallen.
Calling fives. On heavy.
Begun. The Clone War has.
You are listening to The World Between Worlds, a Star Wars podcast where we're marathoning the entire Star Wars continuity from start to finish. Right now we're in the middle of the Clone Wars, and we're here to talk about 3 standalone episodes from Season 2. Lots of fighting, lots of explosions, some weird sci-fi stuff happens with clones.
Where lots of fighting, lots of...
Yeah, some great sci-fi stuff that's set up for more fighting and lots of action. And a great detective story that's a great setup for lots of fighting and lots of action. I can't wait to talk about all the action that we can't show the audience.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful.
You're Yates.
You're Keats.
And this is
No one.
Again, we're off to a 2-person episode for this one.
It's sort of like musical chairs. That's what it's becoming. It's very exciting to see who's not going to be on the episode this week.
Yeah, that's the part everyone looks forward to the most, is how they can be disappointed more and more.
And how long we spend talking about who is and isn't here each episode.
Yeah. So let's just keep talking about that and stop talking about Star Wars.
All right, so episode 9, Grievous Intrigue. Keats.
I thought you meant episode 9, directed by J.J. Abrams.
Episode 9 of season 2, Grievous Intrigue. Keats, would you like to go into it?
Absolutely. So... overall, this is a pretty cookie-cutter episode, I think. It's about General Grievous taking a Jedi hostage, first appearance from Jedi Koth, and he sends his radio transmission to the Jedi over at Coruscant. It's an unknown location where they are, but very clever tactics from Jedi Koth, using hand signals in order to establish where he is on the star charts and such. That was something I thought was interesting, because we never really have seen a Jedi do military hand signals before.
Yeah, that was like interesting.
We've seen it in clones and stuff because, you know, they're very basic troopers, but we've never seen a Jedi do it before.
Obi-Wan has a line like, "Oh, my hand signal training is a little rusty." So presumably there is hand signal training.
Oh my God. They learn it when they're babies. So they send Anakin and Obi-Wan, of course, because who else is going to go? Kiedi Mundi solo mission? I don't think so. It's going to be Anakin and Obi-Wan.
And so it's kind of like the whole episode is just kind of like a Obi-Wan General Grievous rematch with just other stuff like floating around it.
How do you plan on getting Grievous aboard your ship?
Not to worry, the good general and I have a history. I'm sure he'll want to even the score face to face.
Meanwhile, we'll jump in undetected and board the command ship.
If Master Koth is still alive, we will find him.
Hopefully, by the end of this mission, we will have saved Master Koth and captured General Grievous.
Yeah, it's basically like set up that way. It's like Obi-Wan wants to have this rematch set up with General Grievous while Anakin Skywalker is in the background doing all the sketchy break-ins and all that, trying to get Jedi Master Koth out of custody. And interestingly enough, the whole twist this episode is that for once General Grievous is actually smart.
Well, at least they're not destroyer droids.
The General's description of your tactics have been 100% accurate today. Very impressive, even by my standards.
You know, you thought he would have gotten that in season 1, but I guess he's too slow. What do you have to say about that, Yates?
Well, as the biggest General Grievous fan in this room, of 2 people, I think on like the meta level, this definitely reads to me like the creatives were looking back on season 1 and the whole formula that they had utilized season 1 and was like, okay, how can we move past this? How can we show that Grievous has gotten smarter and Obi-Wan has gotten smarter? Because that was probably the thing that made the episode work the most. I mean, other than the action was pretty solid. Again, season 2, the action has been really solid throughout the entire thing, I think, so far. But that in Grievous's mind, this is the moment. This is where he can get Obi-Wan. He 100% believes he's going to kill Obi-Wan. And then Obi-Wan at the same time is also like, this is it. I'm 100% going to get Grievous, and we're finally going to capture him and end this. And I think that was the interesting part. It was basically like a rematch, and both of them thought they had the upper hand, and then both of them end the episode disappointed that neither of them had won.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely the headspace it's definitely like the mindset of both characters. I just thought it was interesting that for once General Grievous was a step ahead, because he's always like lagging behind.
Yeah, I mean they go out of their way to show up right at the front of the episode that Grievous means business, because he easily subdues Koth and even like has fun with the fight with the Magna Guard droids like torturing him by electrocuting him while they were fighting.
Yeah.
So that was definitely cool. He was definitely portrayed as super brutal like out of the gate, and he was pretty brutal in the episode overall.
So what did you think of Jedi Master Koth? Like, what did you think of his character? Is there anything too interesting about him?
He was kind of cookie cutter to me. As far as a Jedi character goes, you started saying cookie cutter. Now we're just gonna say cookie cutter like 17 times. But Koth he reminded me a lot of Shakti in that he was very just straightforward and sort of emotionally detached, I guess, because even at the end he's like, for the utility of the mission, it would have been great if I had just died and you had just killed Grievous.
It would have been better for the episode if I had just died.
So that line of dialogue kind of reminded me of Shakti and how sort of really cold and calculating she was and talking about the clones and stuff. At the same time, he's a little more humanized than that, kind of like Luminara is. So he kind of falls in the middle there for me in terms of Jedi. But, he was a background character with probably 2 shots in The Phantom Menace, and now he's a real person that has said a few things. So that's always nice.
Yeah, I'm not going to miss him, though.
I don't think he's really utilized in the rest of the show.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like definitely among all of the Jedi that we've seen so far with speaking dialogue, he's like totally the last place. He's definitely the least interesting. Even Luminara, who's like pretty like has that.
I think she's just the best version of that character that we get in the show.
Yeah, because she also like the whole point of Luminara's character is like she is the ideal Jedi, but at the same time, that's not a good thing for her. Yeah. Whereas this is just like he's the ideal Jedi and that's it.
And we don't really know. There's not a lot of layers to him. Like, he doesn't get a lot dramatically to do in the episode. And same thing with Adi Gallia. But he still has a lot of attention. Sure, yeah. Same thing with Adi Gallia.
Yeah, Adi Gallia, I wouldn't even really call this like an introduction to her character yet, because she's kind of just like a sidekick. I don't want to get into her character too much, just because I feel like even if this was an introduction to her character, she deserves more screen time to be able to talk about her fully.
I don't think she even gets really any screen time later either. But I'm waiting. There's a lot of episodes I can think
of at least one episode where she's more present. So Obi-Wan boards the
General Grievous boards Obi-Wan's ship.
That's what it is.
He would tractor beam. I thought that was cool. He tractor beams the entire little cruiser.
That's right. Yeah, he tractor beams the ship into Grievous's separatist ship, and that's where the face-off begins. And this is the moment where the actual action of the episode starts. And I think it felt a lot more like how you were saying about the 2 characters like feeling like they had the upper hand. By the end of the episode, it felt a lot more like they were kind of like defending. They were both defensive towards the end of the episode. They were kind of like,
it was because the whole ship was exploding. So that was like, it's a dynamic fight. There's always who has the upper hand, how the environment factors into the fight that's constantly sort of evolving and changing as that final fight progresses. And, new people come in, old people come out. Commander Cody lands a punch on General Grievous's head. I noticed that. I was like, that was pretty cool. I was a fan of that.
I thought he was going to like do the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing from Revenge of the Sith where he kicks him and then he starts screaming. But, I guess that armor is really tough.
Yeah.
So once Obi-Wan and General Grievous start fighting, they get into this small room where they're kind of like about to like end the fight, basically. And Obi-Wan kind of takes the moment to like speak to General Grievous in a more broad existential way and just ask him like what is your purpose of leading this droid army? Like it's not going to equate to anything. It doesn't have any specific end goal.
What have you to show for all your power? What have you to gain?
The future. A future where there are no Jedi.
I don't think this is like, even in the headspace of like the end result is a world without Jedi, it kind of contradicts itself because it's just like a world full of like for General Grievous, like do you think his whole mindset is about turning the galaxy into a droid based galaxy since he like sees himself as a droid?
Well, the thing is, I think there's a lot to support that, but I don't think he mentions that directly, which
mentions what directly?
Because he doesn't make any direct reference to wanting some sort of droid revolution, although like clearly there's parts in his dialogue where he does talk about that. But then in the next episode and constantly throughout the first season as well, he's like also very dismissive of the droids that work under him.
Sir, we need to get our power recharged.
Not this again! How could your power cells be so depleted?
You would not let us ride on one of those creatures with you, sir. If you would allow us to close down for a few moments.
Any more complaints?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe he has high regard for some droids and not high regard for other droids. But yeah, I think what General Grievous does end up talking about is, you know, he has some sort of grudge against the Jedi. And so that,
but it's that plus he talks about how proud he is of his status of being the leader of the biggest droid army. Like, so he is proud of droids. He does speak about being proud of droids in a certain way.
Sure, I guess that's true. But in any case, I think the focus for him is on and no more Jedi. Because while he does talk about the droids and his pride about being a droid, he also literally says, I don't care about politics. So like it's like
there's 3 different characters in this one machine.
So like he doesn't have like an end political goal so much as like a general idea. And I think it's sort of a good example of, you know, General Grievous is pretty short-sighted. Like that's all he cares about is just killing the Jedi more so than all the other things that he could use to his advantage, being the leader of an army. But, you know, based off of what we had seen and what we talked about in the Lair of Grievous episode in season 1, I think that definitely lines up. I think he is a warrior foremost. And I think we talked about, and I believe George and Dave Filoni talked about, General Grievous is sort of envious of a Jedi because he has no Force abilities, and he knows he'll never be one. So, he's getting physically, you know, he can fight with a lightsaber. He can fight with 4 lightsabers, which, you know, most Jedi can't do. And where there was perhaps insecurity in regards to him not having Force powers, there is now pride in having a droid identity.
I get that. It's just, that's to me what makes General Grievous such a weak villain, is like his incompetence and his short-mindedness. And then it's also the aspect of any time they want to pair up a Jedi with General Grievous in a showdown, they always never use the Force, even though that's the main advantage of being up against General Grievous. I think in the fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi in this episode, he uses it a total of like 1 time. And I mean, for this episode though, it kind of makes sense because the whole time he's like stalling, and he's just stalling for Anakin to get General Koth. But in the overall context of the show, that's what makes him so infuriating. And I'm sure a lot of the fan base feels that way too. So if the whole episode is relying on General Grievous to pull the audience through, it's just, that's not going to work for me. But I can understand why some people would like General Grievous. I don't think I do. I think I just said that to say it, but
yeah, he's not as intimidating as he could be, and I agree. But I think at least what is there is exciting for me.
I don't know. This episode wasn't the best for me. I would totally call it skippable. But from an analytical standpoint, I think just finally for sure knowing General Grievous's ideology, that's the whole payoff to watching the episode.
So season 2, episode 10, Deserter, picks up where the last episode left off, in pursuit of General Grievous. But there's a little detour. I mean, the battle continues. But Captain Rex, who is, again, Anakin's main operative in the 501st, is wounded in battle and is sent to a farm. And we find out that the farmer whose land Rex is staying on is actually a clone deserter.
You're a clone. So, I see the war has finally made its way out here. And I guess I can expect a visit from some droids soon. What's your number and rank? My name is LeQuain, Cutlet Queen, and I'm just a simple farmer.
The real heart of the episode, more so than the battle that's happening around them and the context for all this, is Captain Rex, who is a truly great soldier, for the first time looking at what a life could look like for him outside of the war, and how that is in some ways like repulsive to him, and then also like really alluring to him as well. And for me, because Rex is a huge character throughout the remainder of the show, I really loved this episode.
Yeah, this was one of the greater episodes I've seen so far. I mean, it's like I've said before, like the episodes that focus on the troopers are some of the most interesting. Any chance for a clone to shine is a good moment. And I think this is not just a good moment, but a standout moment for Captain Rex.
Yeah, Rex is sort of confronted at first with the idea that this character, he is a deserter. And so at first, that's Rex's immediate reaction, is that this person is an enemy and someone who's opposed to everything that I stand for.
You have to think of it in the context of his mind, which is, it's not like a normal military where it's like a squad mate that would abandon the post. It's his own brother. It's like literally his own flesh and blood. They call each other brother for a reason. It's because they're incredibly close, whether or not they know each other.
Yeah, well, and there's even that sequence where Rex is sort of denying that he has questions about what his life will be like after the war.
The name has to make you feel unique. Especially in an army where everyone looks like you and talks like you. Actually, I've never really thought about it. Yes, you have. Well, how would you know? Because I am as close to you as any life form can be. I've seen how you look at my family, our home.
Cutlet Queen has a family. He has a wife and he has 2 kids. That's something that Rex probably doesn't really have a real context for understanding, because, I mean, we talk about it all the time. The clones have their own little world on Kamino, and they don't really know or are exposed to very basic social ideas that even in the Star Wars universe people take for granted. Sure, he sees it in his travels across the galaxy, but, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And this actually raised an interesting question in my head, which was about the Kaminoans in general. Just like, if they built the clones, wouldn't it make sense for the purpose of the clones to make them infertile? Like, wouldn't it make sense for the clones not be able to procreate? It seems a little bit problematic, but maybe it's for a purpose.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because I think, at least from the Kaminoans' point of view, everything we've got from Lama Su has been pretty cold.
Like, these clones are being designed for a function, nothing else.
Not only that they're being designed for a function, but that they don't have, like, agency, you know? And there's a great exchange between Cutlet Queen and Rex, where Cutlet Queen questions whether or not Rex has been programmed to feel all the ways that he feels about the Republic.
Come on, Rex, admit it. You've thought about what your life could look like if you would also leave the army, choose a life you want. What if I am choosing the life I want? What if I'm staying in the army because it's meaningful to me? And how is it meaningful? Because I'm part of the most pivotal moment in the history of the Republic. If we fail, then our children and their children could be forced to live under an evil I can't well imagine. If you were to have children, of course, but that would be against the rules, wouldn't it? Isn't that what somebody programmed you to believe, Captain? No, Cut, it's simply what I believe. It doesn't matter if it's my children or other people's children. Does that meet with your approval?
When Rex very obviously defends these feelings that he has as his own and not something that's pre-programmed, Cutlet Queen's able to turn that back on him and say, exactly, that's so you decided for yourself about the Republic, just how I decided for myself that I wasn't going to be a part of it. From their point of view, it's like totally unambiguous. It's like, yes, like we chose our destiny here. And that calls into question how Lama Su behaves in the earlier episode, where, you know, they don't have sovereignty, they don't have agency. They are less than human. So why allow them to procreate at all? Because then you have a child. That's where it would get messy. I agree with you. I think like that kid is sort of sovereign and human because he was born of a non-clone mother, you know? So it's like, it's really messy and really weird.
I think overall, with the context of the 3 original prequel films, this sounds like an issue that got brought up in the story meetings and all that, but they kind of had to look over it in terms to tell a better story. That's what I got out of it. And
Yeah.
I don't have any bad feelings about that. I think if you're gonna have to overlook some things.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this was probably one of the most interesting clone episodes. I liked this definitely more than the ARC Trooper rookie arc, and I'm trying to remember what the other clone episodes specifically were. But this was like Ryloth was pretty good. I liked that a lot as well. But
I think this takes the cake.
Yeah, this definitely takes the cake, and it really benefits, I think, from having Rex in, who in the past has been like more of a supporting character. He had his chance to shine in Rookies, but I think definitely this really like opens up the character in a huge way, I think. So the episode ends with a standoff, where Cut has been running from the war, and of course the war is now on his doorstep, and some commando droids that have crashed out into the cornfield are activated now, and there's a siege on their house, and Rex and Cutlet Queen have to defend the house.
I thought the entire set piece of this episode was interesting. You have them in a farm with commando droids who are on low battery support, so they kind of resemble dark human figures more so, because if they were droids they would look a lot more robotic, but because they're commando droids they have that look of like a humanoid. So for me personally, with the moonlight and the whole look of it just reminded me of like a zombie movie. I think that's the genre this episode was trying to tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the genre this episode was trying to tackle. I just think it was just like a brief horror sequence.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
There was definitely horror lighting, obviously, with the moonlight. Yeah, and I thought for the most part, all that stuff was pretty effective. And also on top of that, what added to the stakes was that the clones weren't wearing armor. So that was it was 8 commando droids roughly against 2 clones, 1 injured, 1's older, and neither of them have armor. So, definitely I think the action felt a little more raw and more horror in that way, and that, these people aren't wearing sci-fi suits, they're just in a farmhouse.
Very Night of the Living Dead.
It is very Night of the Living Dead, but to me it also reminded me of sort of like a Western. The whole episode kind of did, at least the parts that took place on the farm. The fact that they're out of this frontier to try and get away from the war, and then, sort of the war catches up with you, and this retired soldier, has to make his final stand to protect his new way of life. The staging of the fight in the farm is definitely more horror-centric, but I think...
Yeah, like when they're creeping up the stairs to go get the family.
Yeah.
Super eerie.
But I think overall the whole thing reminded me more of a Western, and just like the idea of there being sort of a marauding force that comes in the night. That's what it reminded me more of. But I do agree. The creepy robots, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is that this is Star Wars, so that they can do both those things at once, and it can work.
Yeah. I didn't think of a Western one time, honestly, but now that you mention it, it definitely all pieces together in my head.
Yeah, and the fact that they're not actually zombies, they're robots. So that's like a whole different, weird intersection of like 3 different things. Yeah, I mean, just goes to show how fucking sick Star Wars is.
You bet your ass.
This was one of the episodes I have seen, but I had not seen in a very, very long time, and I only watched it once. So looking back, I think it really is like a sort of invaluable mythology episode, I would say, in terms of understanding the clones. I think this really cuts down to the meat and bones of it.
On to the next episode, Lightsaber Lost. This is a pretty amazing episode, I think. And I think a lot of people might look at this as like, oh, this is one of those filler episodes. It is that, but it's also an episode with like a very fun sense of humor to it. It starts off in the alleys of Coruscant. Anakin's looking for a specific pirate weapons dealer, and Ahsoka's told to wait outside, keep guard in case he tries to run away, basically. And when she's standing out there, she notices some scum eyeballing him, so she kind of like gently puts her hand on her lightsaber to like be kind of like, hey, get out of here. Everyone comes out of the bar kind of scared because, it's Anakin, probably murdered like 4 people. And he has the pirate in custody. So everyone kind of swarms over Ahsoka. She gets her lightsaber stolen. And then this kind of becomes an echo of that one scene from Attack of the Clones where Anakin loses his lightsaber and Obi-Wan roasts him for it outside of the club.
She went into the club, Master.
Patience. Use the Force. Think.
Sorry, Master.
You went in there to hide, not to run.
Yes, Master.
Next time, try not to lose it.
Yes, Master.
This weapon is your life.
I try, Master.
In this case, it's kind of where Obi-Wan caught Anakin losing his lightsaber. Anakin has no clue that she lost her lightsaber. So this is kind of like an alternate take as if that were to happen. So this kind of like takes an idea from Attack of the Clones and turns it into its own story.
Yeah, I definitely appreciated that. I mean, they call back to it at numerous points. And also the whole idea that it also takes place in the Coruscant underworld, just like the scene in Attack of the Clones. I mean, visually, it's like definitely calls to mind Attack of the Clones as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that contrast that you're talking about is definitely on purpose, because when I think of that line in Attack of the Clones, we used it in our second episode where we talked about that movie. That scene is super emblematic of Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship. And their relationship as master and apprentice, and you know how Obi-Wan scolds him. Now we have Anakin and Ahsoka, who are, it's a very different learning dynamic, very different dynamic in general. And Ahsoka, instead of telling Anakin, she's like, nope, this stays between me, and I'm gonna solve this problem by myself. Which, in my mind, makes total sense of like how Ahsoka and Anakin's relationship is totally different than Anakin and Obi-Wan's.
I mean, it's more a matter of Anakin is different than Obi-Wan, because it's basically Ahsoka is a mirror of Anakin. Like, they're so similar, so it's basically two Anakins dealing with the situation.
And so it was a lot more complicated.
Yeah, that's the Anakin plus Anakin equals Ahsoka and Anakin return to the Jedi Temple. Ahsoka, you can tell, has been kind of like very quiet, very internalizing her panic about what she's going to be doing about this problem of hers. So what she does is she goes to the library to meet with Grandma Jocasta Nu, and she actually recommends that she talk to Master Tera Sinube, who is very well versed in the criminal underworld of Coruscant. And so she's like, oh great, let me at him. And he turns out just to be like some old guy that sleeps all the time. And then he goes like, I need to come along with you for this because I haven't gotten out of the house and since I had to go to the grocery store. And so she's kind of like, she does decide, and she's like, okay. And that's where the story kind of starts to fall into a detective story. It becomes very like how we've been saying that every episode is like a different take on a specific genre. She kind of climbs up the ladder going to find her lightsaber. She meets a ton of weird, funny, quirky characters, new alien species, and basically throughout this entire time, Master Tera Sinube is like kind of trying to mentor Ahsoka because she's so like doesn't know how to deal with any kind of like panic that she can't control. So he's just trying to like, it's very much echoing the whole parable of the tortoise and the hare, where the tortoise is kind of like methodically doing like racing very slowly so he can like mentally be ahead of the game.
But Master, we don't know where we're going. He could be in any one of these rooms.
You need to be more quiet, young one.
Okay.
Not quiet with your mouth, quiet with your mind. You're so anxious to find this pickpocket that your worry is equal to his.
I think that relationship really worked, and it also maybe shows how Anakin is deficient as a teacher. Jordan's talked a lot about that consistently, and Ahsoka oftentimes only sees the good in Anakin because Anakin is a reflection on her. But in this case, you know, she's in a situation where she doesn't want to do the Anakin way because telling Anakin what happened would mean, you know, possible punishment. You know, she doesn't want to be reprimanded by Anakin. Tera Sinube is a totally different alternative and, you know, more of the Obi-Wan school. You know, like a good example of the things that Ahsoka is not learning from Anakin. Being patient, you know, being control over your emotions, very basic thing.
Things that they should have taught you as a child.
Yeah. Actually, talking about it now, I think it would almost have been interesting if Ahsoka like went to Obi-Wan instead of Anakin, and that was the odd pairing. Just because I like to see more interaction between Obi-Wan and Ahsoka specifically. But, you know, I get it. Obi-Wan's also a goody two-shoes, so he probably would have told on Ahsoka anyway.
It's true.
And we ended up getting Tera Sinube, my favorite white lightsaber-wielding dinosaur of all time. One thing I really liked was that there's a moment at the end where it's like clear that him and Yoda have been best buds for a long time.
I was waiting for that to happen. I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they're so old.
Because they're both so old, yeah. But I love that. I mean, it only makes sense there's more characters like Yoda, but for whatever reason, I mean, it's clear Tera Sinube has like his own strengths, and Yoda obviously has his own strengths. But, you know, they have mutual respect for each other. I like the whole thing.
Yeah, this whole episode is like, definitely, I think it might be my favorite from season 2 so far, even more so than Holocron Heist. It doesn't hold back on its humor, and I think like a lot of times the Clone Wars series wants to be more serious and more It wants to get a message across to the point where it has to like take itself a little too seriously. So it's really refreshing to see like a whole humor-based episode.
But I mean, you're talking about humor. I mean, the other part of the episode that works is the fact that it's a detective story, and I love mystery stories in general.
But it's more of a background to the character interaction.
It's more Clue than the Maltese Falcon.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, sure.
The mystery in and of itself isn't too important. It's pretty low stakes. I mean, because ultimately the only thing that matters is the lightsaber.
She lost it. She gets it back.
Yeah,
big spoiler.
Yeah, it's more about like. This whole thing is about Ahsoka's self-esteem, really. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's a teenager self-esteem. So that's the stakes of the episode. I mean, people are dying left and right, but at the end of the day, that's the emotional nugget of the episode. But at the same time, there's also sort of the responsibility and heaviness of being a Jedi, because her thing halfway through the episode is like, oh my God, gangsters are going to have this lightsaber. Like, they will kill people with this thing that's like precious to me, So that's sort of like one of the things that maybe gives the line in Attack of the Clones a little more weight too.
Yeah,
is like that whole thing.
They even highlight on that in this episode where they're walking down the hallways of the criminal syndicate leader's home, where Tera Sinube says like, you feel like you'll be partially responsible for all these people's murders I think he says something like, and you're kind of right. While it is like a pretty lighthearted episode, it does have a little bit seriousness in it, but it's kind of like a background, honestly.
Well, the episode ends, of course, Ahsoka does get her lightsaber back after lots of chasing and fighting. But the real stinger at the end is at first I thought Tera Sinube was going to say, you should tell your master about everything that happened here. But instead of doing that, he says, you should teach these younglings about the lesson that you've learned. So we see Ahsoka, a good marker of her progression as a character in that, she is mentoring these kids now. Which I thought was cool. She hasn't done that before yet, right?
Nope. This is her first episode where she's interacting with students.
Yeah, and I get it. Ahsoka's good.
She's very compassionate.
Looking at Yoda's face when Ahsoka walks in, like Yoda's like, yes, like Ahsoka's ready to teach. Like, let's get her on this. She's fast tracking to the Jedi Council.
Thank God it's not Plo Koon trying to teach them military tactics, trying to teach them their hand signal academy.
So, wrapping it up, I mean, I think all 3 episodes had their own strengths. I mean,
first one had a strength.
I was kind of like anxious, like in between arcs, because you kind of get that way, even though like I love the standalone episodes. And I think I really, I've spoken very highly of all the ones in season 1. After all of the Geonosis arc, I was like, let's get the Mandalore arc up next. But I was pleasantly surprised and had a lot of fun with these 3 episodes.
And I can't wait until we get to the droid episodes where we take it slow, or we take it even slower.
Even slower. I can't wait. This has been The World Between Worlds. Next week, we will be talking about the first Mandalore arc. That would be Season 2, Episode 12, The Mandalore Plot, Season 2, Episode 13, Voyage of Temptation, and Season 2, Episode 14, Duchess of Mandalore.
You do not want to miss this arc. This is important. This is absolutely necessary.
Everything in your life has been leading up to this arc.
You got a funeral to go to?
Cancel it.
Hey, let him rot. I got it. Watch the Siege of the Duchess of Mandalore. I don't know what this Star Trek stuff is.
The Star War.
This is important Star Wars stuff.
It is indeed. And if you want to get up-to-date information on The World Between Worlds and a schedule, you can like us on Instagram and Facebook. My name is Yates.
Like us on Instagram.
Like us on Instagram. Follow us and
tweet at us on Facebook. This is Keats.
This is Yates. Signing off.